Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace.
Let me see you dancing. Oh, good dance moves. Those are good ones. What else you got? Oh, wow, you got a spin. Whoa. Down to a ground spin. Anything else? Like a cool jump? Wow. All right, let's go.
Have you ever shot an APS-C censored camera? That's what Sony asked me about a month ago, and at the time my answer was no, I've really only shot full frame cameras. But that was until they sent me this guy to test out, the brand new Sony a6700, a tiny but very mighty little camera. Like I said, I've only really ever shot full frame cameras, but because this camera is so small and lightweight, I've just had it with me a lot the past few weeks. I've shot it a ton, and I even got to take it to the wild animal park to shoot some footage with my wife and my daughters. And yeah, seeing that footage made me a believer in APS-C censored cameras. So first up, what is the a6700? Like I said, it has the APS-C size sensor, so a much smaller sensor, and that actually gives you a 1.5 times crop factor on your lens. So when you look at the barrel of the lens and you look at the focal length that you're looking at, 16, 24, 35, you gotta take each of those numbers and multiply them by 1.5 to understand where you're actually at compared to a full frame camera. Does that make sense? Like if I'm at 16 millimeters on this lens, that's actually times 1.5, which would be 24 millimeters. So looking through the lens here at 16 on here, it looks like what I'm used to on my full frame camera at 24. Now that's not ideal on the wide end because in order to have something like a 16 to 35, like a vloggy lens, you need like a 10 to 20 millimeter lens. That would give you like a 15 to 30 millimeter frame. But on the long end, it actually gets really fun. So again, the lens I shot most was the 16 to 55, which would be a 24 to 82.5. But a lens that I got to take to the wild animal park with me was, check this thing out, 70 to 350 millimeter lens, but again, times 1.5. So that is 105 millimeters to like, what is that, 525 millimeters? A 105 to 525 in a lens that, here's my full frame 70 to 200, and here's a equivalent 105 to 525. You can see on these APS-C size cameras, not only is the camera smaller, but the lenses are significantly smaller. And while most of the animals were kind of hiding out at the wild animal park, it was a pretty hot day. I did get a chance I shot the lions. I got some cool shots of them. I got to shoot the gorillas a little bit. And at 525, if you're shooting at these focal lengths, definitely use a tripod or a monopod. All of this is handheld footage. I just sat there like this and I was like, don't breathe, don't breathe. But I was just testing the camera. I was having fun. If you really are shooting at focal lengths that long, definitely at least a monopod, but probably a tripod. And with the a6700 being able to shoot at 4K up to 120 frames a second, 422 10-bit footage. When you look at the footage coming out of this thing, like it's bananas that the camera is this small, but able to do that much. Now the 4K 120 does have a crop factor, but drop that down to 60 frames a second and you don't have a crop factor. Again though, when you're shooting something like wildlife, the crop factor is actually even more helpful at 4K 120. It's crazy because like the ZV-E1 just added 4K 120 support, and this camera out of the box is having 4K 120 support. Like I said, because it's shooting 10-bit 422 footage, we have S-Log3 on here, we have S-Cinetone, and it looks really, really good. I pretty much shot everything in S-Cinetone on this camera, but that's because, again, like it's such a small, compact camera that what I imagine people are looking for out of this camera is really professional results and kind of that high-end look and feel of their videos and their photos, but with less effort. And that's kind of what S-Cinetone offers you. If you don't know the difference between S-Cinetone and S-Log3, click up there and go watch my comparison video between the two. But S-Cinetone, it's giving you like 90% of the results of S-Log3, but without having to grade any footage. Hey, Before we jump into one of the coolest parts about this camera, let me thank the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. If you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you will know that Squarespace is the all-in-one website building platform that I have used for my photography business for the last 10 years. The reason I started using Squarespace in the first place was probably why most people start using Squarespace is they didn't know how to build a website, so they jump on there and now suddenly they can build a super dope website. You can just start with one of their professionally designed templates, swap your info in, and it already looks pretty dang good. But then using their fluid engine system, their drag and drop customization, it is so easy to take one of their already very professional looking websites and customize it exactly to your business or that side project that you're looking to get going. And the best part for me too was that not only was it easy to set my website up, it's also incredibly easy to go in there, make small changes, and best of all, I don't have to worry about my website anymore. Squarespace takes care of all the web hosting maintenance stuff, so I can just focus on photography. If you want a super dope website that's incredibly easy to build, shoot to the first thing in the description, go over to squarespace.com, set up a website during a totally free trial. When you're ready to go live, use code David Manning and save 10% off at checkout. Okay, back into this video. The next part's very cool. But in S-Log3, the A6700 will give you over 14 stops of dynamic range, which again, like that doesn't make any sense to me. In my S-Log3 versus S-Cinetone video, I talked about the Sony Venice camera. Sony's like $100,000 camera that they shot Top Gun with. That camera has 16 stops of dynamic range. Now the A7S III, the FX3, all those different cameras have just over 14 stops of dynamic range in S-Log3, and now the A6700 also has over 14 stops of dynamic range in S-Log3. What? Like I want to say this is like high-end prosumer camera, but then they give us features like that, and it's like, is this like a B cam? Is this like a B cam for pro setup? Like you totally could use this as a B cam on pretty much any setup. I think that's gonna give some people pause on purchasing like a second FX3 or even purchasing the ZVE1, because also this camera also now has the AI processor in there, which means like insanely good human tracking. So with the human tracking, it tracks your eye, it tracks the face, but even if the person turns around and like walks away from you, it's gonna use pose detection to be able to track their body so that when they turn back around, it's immediately locked back on their eyes, and that's bananas. But what's even more bananas is all the other different AI tracking modes you can go into. So you can now track animals, birds, insects, planes, trains, and cars. You can track all those different things, and you can set it to tell it what to track to. And what was crazy was while we were at the Wild Animal Park, we went over to the kangaroos, and I started filming one of these kangaroos, and I realized like, oh, I still have it on human tracking. And while in human tracking, like it was focusing on the kangaroo, but it wasn't like locked onto the eye or anything. It just kind of had a box over the kangaroo. But then I flipped it to animal, and immediately it went shuguk, and it put a little box around the kangaroo's eye, and it had a big box on the kangaroo's body. So wherever that kangaroo went, if you could see its eye, it was locked on the eye. And as soon as the kangaroo kind of looked away, it just held on the body, and it was using that pose detection to know this is an animal. The animal is hopping along like this, and as soon as it looks again, boom, right back to the eye. And even when we went over to the flamingos and I set it to track birds, I was able to lock onto one flamingo, tap the screen so that it locked onto that flamingo. And even though that flamingo was walking around, I was able to track a single flamingo amongst a ton of other flamingos. And that AI chip it's one of the things that on the ZVE1 that I was so impressed with. And now we're getting it in smaller bodied cameras. What's crazy about all that is that like we have all these very high-end features, but in a camera body, if you take the camera body, the SD card, and the battery included, we're at 493 grams for the A6700. Like I imagine if you're someone who's going out traveling, you want just a more compact setup for your camera rig, this is gonna be a very compelling option for travel or people that are just looking for a more compact, smaller rig. Carrying around a full frame camera with a big giant lens on it, not nearly as convenient as carrying around this thing. Look at the difference between those two. As for the physical camera itself, it's a total redesign from the A6600. So we have now a flip out screen that rotates forward like that. We have microphones up top, but we don't have anything like the 3 capsule mic from the ZV series. It's not, they didn't really set it up like a vlog camera. We have a viewfinder on there, which the ZV-E1 does not have, but we don't have like tally lamps or anything up front. The microphones are just kind of built into the camera. Then over to the side, we've got a single SD card slot, and then above that, we have headphone jack and USB-C port, and then below that, we have a mini HDMI and a headphone jack at the bottom. For the grip side, the grip feels really good. Like from a big camera to a little camera, like, it's actually a really solid grip. It does still use the FZ100 batteries, so really good battery life. We've got a bunch of custom buttons on there. The dial setup is actually really unique. So there's kind of a top main dial selector, and then there's like a little rim dial below it, and that's where you flip from video to photo to S&Q mode. But overall, really impressive. Like the build quality, I would say, is exactly on par with their full frame lineup. Like there's definitely there's no like, hey, in our APS-C line, we use a cheaper body or like more plasticky body. Everything feels exactly the same as something like the A7 IV or A7R5. I would say for my 2 gripes on this camera, one is there's active stabilization, which is really good. If you're just using active stabilization, I would say it's better than nothing, but the ZV-E1 introduced dynamic stabilization, and we did not get dynamic stabilization on this camera, even though we have an AI processor. I'm kind of hoping that's like a firmware update that could be added to this camera, because this camera, this size camera, add on dynamic stabilization, and like this would just be a sweet little video camera to use and pretty much not need a gimbal. My only other gripe, and this is I think a stupid one, but I'm gonna say it anyways, is that if you're using the camera like this, you're looking down on this flip out screen. Can you see that the flip out, it doesn't stay at 90 degrees. Like it's kind of like angled in a little bit. Like it doesn't go, hang on, there, see, let it go. And then it kind of up. It's not much. It's not like considerable, but it's enough that when you're shooting with it, like you do feel like you're, I don't know. You feel like you're shooting, like I want to like push it up. I want to like pin it to the side of the camera so it stays at 90 degrees. Like it stays parallel to the camera. It's kind of a little ginky offy. So again, who do I think this camera is for? Who should be buying the A6700? I think this camera is for people that are looking for professional, really high-end results, but in a more compact, more affordable system. Like I kind of want to pick up this camera as a vlog rig. So Sony does make a 10 to 20 millimeter power zoom lens. I think that lens is like $750. Now, Sony hasn't told me as of recording this how much this camera is gonna cost, but the A6600 I think is like $1,400 or $1,500. So if you add those together, maybe like for $2,200 or $2,250 with this camera and that 10 to 20 power zoom lens, I could have a vlog rig for like $2,200. In comparison here, the A7S III that you're currently watching me on and the 16 to 35 millimeter lens that you're currently watching me on, the body is like $3,500 and the lens is $2,200. So $5,700 for the rig that you're currently watching me on, or the potential of $2,200 from this camera and a 10 to 20 power zoom vlog lens. That's compelling. And seeing the footage out of this, like I think it would give my A7S III kind of a run for the money. Like, especially if we just put the cameras in S-Cinetone, I really think it would give it a run for the money. Let's see, I'll do some side-by-sides and put them on the screen right now. Can you tell the difference between which of these cameras is in the like $2,200 to $2,300 range and which of these cameras is $5,700? And if you can't, I mean, that's annoying for me as the owner of the $5,700 camera, but awesome for future owners of the $2,200 potential rig that is the Sony a6700. Yeah, the footage that I saw from the Wild Animal Park in S-Cinetone, I wasn't even shooting S-Log3. I wasn't even doing big color grades on it. I was just shooting at S-Cinetone, looking at it at a camera and going, that's pretty good. Yeah, again, very compelling. This lens is also very compelling, the 70 to 350, which on this camera becomes 105 to 525, and it is this small and this lightweight. I should have gone and shot surfing with this camera. I gotta send this camera back, but I really I really should have gone to the beach and shot surfers. This lens would be great to shoot surfing. Crap. Sony, can I have the camera like one more day? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts though on this camera, on just APS-C censored cameras in general. If you shoot maybe the A6400 or 6500, if you're already in this series lineup, like is this enough of an upgrade to get you to move to the A6700? Again, flip out screen, 4K 120, S-Log3, 422 10-bit footage, AI processor built into here so you get all that just absurd tracking. This again, like I said, people that are looking at FX3s or ZVE1s as their secondary cameras, you might want to look at this guy. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I will see you soon. I'm gonna try to keep this camera one more day, go shoot some surfers. I'll see ya. Audio rolling. Video rolling, mic check, mic check. Can you hear the air conditioner? There's no way I can film this if the AC is not on. This is like, it is like 95 degrees outside.